Consumers are leading the way when it comes to technology and shopping. That is the latest finding from IBM's 2012 Smarter Consumer Study. Around 90% of us believe social networks can save us time, while 40% use websites to compare products. But an in-store visit is still the preferred way for consumers to make a purchase. Well, joining me to discuss the latest trends in technology and retailing is Ian Wong, IBM's Australia and New Zealand industry leader for retail and consumer products. Ian Wong, thanks very much for your time. Look, a few, I imagine, retailers out there, bricks and mortar retailers, wouldn't be too surprised to hear about us preferring to look online. Maybe a little bit of a worrying trend. Is it a trend you expect to continue?
Well, I think what we see in this study is encouraging for the bricks and mortar retailers because, as you said, the stores is still the preferred channel in which to make a purchase. Consumers are more empowered, therefore they want to be able to research, to browse in the digital channels, but they still want to go into the store and touch and feel. But they also want the option, if they wanted to purchase online. So I think for a traditional retailer or bricks and mortar retailer, it's really about giving the choice to the consumer.
How big a transition, how big of a transformation, if you like, has the market been between consumer, customer and business because of the likes of e-commerce and because of the advent of the digital age?
Right. So it's very much about, we call it the change of balance of power. So let's talk about 10 years ago. 10 years ago, the source of the information was very much in the business's hands, right? So they were the source of the truth. And what you've seen in the past 10 years is explosion of the internet, mobile, social, and so on. And what you have now are people who have access to technologies. And over those technologies, they're conversing with each other and educating each other. So what you have now is the empowered consumer. And it is now within the consumer's hands to demand from the retailers and from the businesses how are the businesses going to meet their specific demands.
And look, how are businesses, obviously particularly here in Australia, how have they reacted to the power, as you say, the power balance shift going very much in favour of the consumer?
Well, an interesting thing that we found in the study, and we run the study every year, so we ran it in 2010, 2011, and 2012. An interesting thing we found in the study this year is there's an improvement in the way that the retailer is engaging the consumer. So we found that trust in the retailers and the manufacturers was, I think, at an all-time low last year. What we've seen is a doubling in trust in the retailers and the manufacturers, the traditional sources of information, if you will, in the past year. So what we've seen is the retailers truly understanding that the balance power has shifted, and they now must give the options to the information. They must be open with the information, authentic with the information, and give the options to the consumers.
Look, what happens if they're a bit slow in that regard? I mean, is it that critical whereby you could see potentially retailers and other businesses fall by the wayside because they have been a bit too slow, or I don't want to say ignorant, but just haven't been as open, if you like, to the changing technologies and the empowerment, if you like, of the consumer?
Well, from the retailer standpoint, one encouraging thing we're seeing is that the stores is still the preferred channel in which to make the purchase. And so, but there is a warning around, you must understand that the consumer is seeking out other channels in which to browse, research, and ultimately maybe to make a purchase. So again, it would be, I guess, at your detriment as a business if you were to ignore that the balance of power has shifted to the consumer.
And just quickly and finally, I've got to ask, social media. How big a place is that, important factor is that becoming?
Okay, so one of the themes that we truly explored was trust, because I spoke about trust before. And we found that to gain trust from the consumers and gain consumers' trust, you need to engage with them in a clear and concise manner. And social media is one of the emerging ways in which to engage with the consumers. So, and we found a direct link between trust, advocacy, and spend. People who trust you eventually become advocates, and that leads to greater spend. On average, advocates spend 5% more with a retailer than someone who's not an advocate.
And look, it's a difficult one, I suppose, to measure, but I mean, who do we trust? Do we trust the people on our Facebook accounts or on the Twitter feeds and so forth who say, oh, look, I bought this here, I liked it, or I bought this here, didn't like the service? I mean, are we becoming sort of almost I don't want to say a pack mentality or herd mentality, but I mean, is it having that big an influence on our decision making?
And that's another key part of the finding. We coined it communities of we. So it's no longer about me. I am coalescing with other people who are like me. And the retailers who are going to be successful are the ones who can listen to the communities of we and then understand who the influencers are in those communities and through social media engage with those influencers to influence the way that, to influence the way that these communities act.
Ian Wong, look, great to have you on. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you.